Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Chad and Chong podcast.
I'm Chad.
And I'm Chong. And today we have my dear friend, James Zavaleta. He is a Grammy-nominated singer, producer, musician, and managing director currently at Pickle Music. James, welcome to the Chad and Chong podcast.
Thank you for having me, man.
Last time we saw each other was probably after Kobe had passed. I don't know if you remember that.
That's right. We did. We went to Staples Center, paid our respects.
Yeah,
man. That was a tough time. We're having a tough time right now with the Lakers, which I don't want to talk about.
We won't talk about it.
Yeah. But we're having a tough time right now. But we'll be all right.
Yeah,
we'll be all right.
What's been new since we've last seen each other, man? What's been going on?
Man, I'm staying busy. Advertising. Mm-hmm. That's what's going on. I now work with the company that we do music for media. So 90% of it is in the advertising space. So I've been staying busy with that, man. Creating original music, licensing, sonic branding, for all the top brands that we see on TV right now. So
can you name some of the brands?
Yeah. We do work directly with DoorDash, Visa. We're doing things for Miller Lite. There's a lot Gatorade. I mean, the list goes on. The list goes on. So I mean, a lot of car spots. We work directly with Cadillac, Honda, Toyota projects. So we're all over the place, trying to make some noise.
That's good, man. When we met was probably when I was about maybe 14, 15 years old. I don't know if you remember this.
I do.
I used to come out, see you and Alberto Salas play at Catalina Jazz Club with José Mario and Luis Conte.
Yeah,
and
the Cats.
And then I think I went one time to El Floridita, which is a well-known salsa spot out in Hollywood, right? Hollywood.
Shout out to Armando. Yeah.
So it's cool to see. I mean, your progression, literally in life. Everything you've accomplished and everything you've been doing, and now what you're currently working at. So
appreciate
awesome.
that, man. Yeah, the salsa days. We'll talk about that. Yeah.
So you're obviously now in something that's called like sync and licensing. And we could go into that later. But how did it start? Like, how did you get into music, and how did it eventually become a career?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I was born and raised in Southern California. I was born in Torrance, raised in Long Beach. And I started music at a young age. My first instrument was the drums. I had my first drum set at 4.
Wow.
And then by the time I was 8, I had like a Tama Rockstar, a 5-piece white Tama Rockstar. So like I thought I was going to be a drummer my entire life. I don't come from a musical family, so that was something that was interesting to me. What they did is that they supported, though. I guess my mom and my dad saw like, oh, he's always with the pots and pans, and he's got something. So I think they supported that, and for that I'm thankful. But started playing drums. Then around 11, I started playing Latin percussion. So I started playing timbales, little conga, hand percussion, because I started listening to the genre, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't know how deep we want to get into it, but salsa is what I fell in love with. So I go to a Mark Anthony concert at the Greek Theater when I'm like 12. I was already playing music, right? And I remember watching him on stage, and I was like, yeah, I want to do that. The crowd control that he had, he had a huge band, all from Puerto Rico. They had like a, 16-piece orchestra. Like, it was dope. And that made me start singing. So I started singing late. My mom, for Mother's Day, asked if I was singing the talent show. Mind you, I had never really sung, right? Like in public. And I was in 6th grade. And so much so that I sang along to the track. It wasn't even like an instrumental. It was like I'm singing along, but I was putting on a show. And I think that caused something. That caused like a little flame to kind of go off. And people loved it. I wasn't shy. I never felt shy. And so I'm like, oh, I could do this. I did what I saw at Mark's concert. I people were happy, and then the rest of history, man. Then I just got into the salsa world. My first professional gig was at 15 in Las Vegas at the Golden Nugget. That's kind of where it started. I'm like, oh, I can make money doing this. All right, cool. And so yeah, man. From there, the rest is history.
So you transitioned into a singer, and you've had a pretty successful singing career. You've even done some TV stuff. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
I've been singing on Dancing with the Stars for the last 10 seasons now. So like 7 years with the Ray Chu Band. And I'm a swing chair. So I'm a principal swing chair, which means I'm not on every episode, but I'm on, a handful of episodes every season. And so that's been something where like I got to that show and I realized the level that I had to get to. You know, I was there, but then I realized all the other musicians and singers, and I'm like, yo, there's levels to this. Real fortunate, man, just to be part of that group, you know?
Maybe you could share a little bit too about just how intense it is, you know, for a lot of viewers. You know, we catch maybe an hour, I mean, maybe 2 hours for the finale or something. And a lot of the times you don't even see the singers because it is a dancing show.
Right.
But you clearly hear the full ensemble and just how much it really supports the choreography and the things that are happening on screen. But how much work? What are the rehearsals like? How quick are turnarounds? How quick do you have to learn songs? You know, just give us some insight on what it's like to be on such a high production television show.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a production, you know, and there's just an insane amount of people that you know, everybody from back of the house and all the sound engineers and all the crew. It's a massive production for the band. A typical rehearsal day can run 16 to 18. I mean, we've hit 18 hours before.
Wow.
The show day, like our call time is usually 5 a.m. So, you know, we have to get up at, you know, and I'm talking about singers and musicians. You know, I feel bad for my horn players. At 5:30, we're sound checking, and you can't sound check half speed because you have to sound check, let's say 80%. You know, because they got to get real levels, right? So a typical day is that starting around 5:30, you run the show once, just us, the band. Then you take a break. Then you run the show for the first time with the dancers. Then you take another break. Then you do an official dress rehearsal. And then when 5 o'clock rolls by, that's when you do the show live. But by that point, we've been singing and performing for the last 8-10 hours.
Wow.
So what you see live is not like, you know, we have some great musicians in the band and the singers are some of my favorite singers in the world. But we're probably not at our peak because we've been been just working all day. Yeah.
Shout out to Roland Garcia,
the homie, you know. No, he kills it on that. Everybody in that band. Shout out to the singers, CJ, Travis, Felicia, Kelly, and the Ray Chu band. You know, Javier. Javier was from the salsa scene. That's when me and him met when we were younger.
How did you get connected with the DWTS band? For short, right?
Yeah. Man, it's all connected. I got called because they had a salsa song, a salsa track.
Nice.
And so, you know, something that I credit Ray Chu and his success is that he always makes sure that it's authentic. Whoever he gets, you know, that applies to the singers or the musicians. Sure. And he wanted it like a real deal, you know, salsero. And my name at the time, I believe it was Harry Kim. Trumpet player, you know, el maestro. And I believe he asked around, and I think some other cats too, like also said my name. So I think a few people said my name. And I got called, man. And it was one of those where it was like, I got called the day of the rehearsal.
Wow.
And of course, I go and I'm like, oh yeah, I know that song, Rancancan. I've sang that a million times. And I go at rehearsal and I start ad-libbing, right? Because that, you know, the lack of experience. I start ad-libbing and I'm thinking I'm killing it. 30 seconds into the song, he stops the band. He's like, hey, did you listen to the reference we sent? And I'm like, yeah, I got this. I got this. Rancancan, I'm saying this. You know, but for TV, you have to be precise.
Yeah.
Meaning the dancers are expecting the singer, the band, whatever. They're doing their dance off the cues of whatever sung line or horn played or hit. So I had to sing it like the record, which in salsa, and I'm sure you know this, you know, something beautiful about the genre is that you kind of ad-lib every time. Not that day. And he was like, why don't you take a beat and go listen to it?
Wow.
And so and at that point I realized like, oh, yeah, I don't know it like that. Like, because they also make a special edit.
Sure.
So it's not like even if I know the song, I have to learn it how the edit is.
Yeah.
And so I went really quick and I was like, you know, all right, I have to learn this. I have 10 minutes to learn this. And then I came back. I did it the way, like, you know, that it was asked. And he was cool. He was like, all right, cool. You're on the show on Monday. And then the rest is history.
Man,
the rest is history.
That's pretty merciful, man. That's awesome on his end.
Yeah, man. I was like, but that's what I mean. But you realize the levels that, or the layers, I should say, not levels, but the layers of it. You know, I was driving there. I was like, I'm gonna kill this. I'm gonna walk in there and then you're like, you know, you get humbled real quick because you realize you're part of a bigger thing. You're part of a production.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, it's a blessing for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
You said something when you're talking about how you got this TV gig, basically, and you said, you know, they were saying my name. They were saying my name. That speaks a lot to your character and just how you are as a person. I know for a lot of our viewers, you know, we think there's tons and tons of hours of practice and learning material, working on your craft, honing in your skill.
Yeah.
But what about the person side of it, the human side of it? Because for people to say your name when you're not even in that room, that's a high compliment.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little about that?
Yeah, I think, especially knowing Harry, right? Which you know, I wouldn't say that we were always hanging out, but we did a handful of gigs together. Again, on the salsa side of things, and people at his level who have toured with everybody, has played on every record that you could think of. You know, he was with Phil Collins forever.
That's right.
Tom Jones, like someone like legacy artists. He's been with them. I know that he noticed that I was always on time. I think he always noticed that if a song was assigned to me, I learned it. So it's almost like those things, those controllables that some people take for granted. Like they show, you know, musicians show up late sometimes, or they don't learn the material. That was the one thing that I probably would overemphasize because, you know, I always knew that I was a late bloomer when it came to singing, right? So I knew that I had to out hustle people the other way.
Sure.
And I remember him mentioning that during the gigs. He would come up and be like, "Hey, like," so I'm thankful, and I think people at that level don't have time to mess around, right? So they're not gonna vouch or recommend someone. I won't, even in my position now. If I know someone's not showing me that they're gonna be on time or learn the material, even if I like them as a person, I don't have time to put my name on the line for them. So I think the human side, I would probably say that's. I'm guessing this is the reason why he threw my name in the hat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Along with the professionalism, one aspect of music that isn't talked about enough sometimes is you're either a musician that can read music or you're very good at retention. Can you talk a little bit about both? I mean, your experience in doing professional gigs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not the best sight reader. Like I can tell you that right now. And I work with some singers that are incredible sight readers. I think that's probably a conversation for another day. I think I do wish that I would have learned it earlier and like really honed in on that craft. But there are other things that I was focusing on, right? That have to do with like performance, and crowd management, and the other things that you know you got to think of as like a front man. I think you understanding that you have to respect it. So even if it's not maybe sight reading, but if I have to learn the song and perform it 25 times alone before I get to rehearsal, then I need to do that.
That's good,
right? So I think it's important, and I'm telling you, in no way, shape, or form am I saying to not sight read, but like, if 10 a.m. my fellow musicians sight read, learn how to sight read because it is important, you know, and it would make my life easier on other sessions where I got stuff put in front of me and I'm like, I had to do a double take. Like, all right, cool. Okay, I got it. And you know, that creates nerves, but imagine if you know it good enough where you're like, cool, like I can do this.
Right.
Again, it just has to do with getting better and just honing in on the craft, which that is part of the craft.
Yeah.
Right?
You mentioned 10 seasons of Dancing with the Stars. Is that right?
Yeah, 10 seasons.
Now, there's, you know, something about, you know, being prepared or something when opportunity meets preparation, and, you know, you may be able to get your foot in the door and all these kinds of things where we think the dream gig is there and you finally made it. But there's also a whole nother avenue of actually keeping something at this high level. Can you talk a little bit about how you even get to be, you know, called back over and over again on something like this for 10 seasons?
Yeah, I also shout out to Janelle Grayson, who's like a huge important part of the band. She's pretty much Ray's right-hand man and just manages the musicians and the singers and makes sure that everybody's on point. In my case, it has to do with understanding your place, right? And so I've been an MD. I used to have a band. I've been in a leadership role, and I've also been on just a background role. And I think understanding your role, you know, people like a good leader will say like, all right, I know that person's here for the greater good of the project. And so if there's anything that I think of why there's been success and at least they keep calling me back is because they know they can count on me. And they can also count that outside of just the material, being a good hang. I don't know how many other guests you've all had or if that's ever been brought up to like, you know, younger musicians that are getting into this. If they've ever heard that phrase, like, is he or is she a good hang?
Yeah.
What they mean by that is, can I be in the room with this person for 12 hours, for 14 hours? Because that's actually part of it. You know, is this person messing around half the time? Is this person speaking more than they should? Again, knowing your role, right? And so for me, it was like when I go to the show and I'm on set, you know, I'm only engaging when, you know, because if it's not my lead song, I'm not sure. It's not my time to shine. So I sit back and I'm just, you know, whatever role I have to play, I got to play it. But if it's my time to sing my lead, then I go all out. So it's understanding your role, and I think being prepared. And I think it's the confidence in that, right? Like if they see every time we assign a song, no matter how many days, or sometimes you get a last minute, hey, we got to change, you got to learn it by tomorrow. And you show up the next day and you know it, that gives us confidence. Yeah. If we're going to put this all together, I think I get called because of the consistency that I bring.
Is there maybe like a fun story that's happened while you guys were taping or something where you guys maybe had to be quick on your toes and quickly change, or, you know, maybe something wrong happens technically and you guys still had to pull it off somehow?
There's a lot of things that come to mind, but one with Mr. T was on the show. You know, he gave everybody in the band like a little keychain, and you press the button and it gave us saying like, you pity the fool. And, man, but like the nicest guy, the sweetest guy. We were doing his episode. I can't remember what song, but you know, like we're all in in-ears, right? So we all have in-ears. So there's playback, and then there's like we're playing on top of that. I remember that the click track went off the grid. And so that was something where you're like, and it happened, like it was perfect during all the rehearsals, but when we're live, you know, in front of the country, the click's just going off, and I don't have time to like lower it in my monitor because I'm on, right? Things like that happen, man. But no, I mean, I can't think. You know, there's always something, man, like a sound glitch or like, one of the props fell a little bit, and you know, you can't get distracted because you're live, right? So you can't really react. You have to act like nothing's wrong, you know?
Yeah, so technical issues definitely happen at the highest level, but I think to allude to what you said earlier, being extra prepared and really knowing your material probably helps.
Yeah, 100%.
In those situations.
Yeah, 100%. But that's the cool show, man. It's been a great experience, and again, it makes you realize I've got work to do.
You've had quite a journey yourself. I mean, you started off drums, then singing, then you were doing TV things, and now you've actually transitioned into a managing partner at Pickle Music, which is more of an executive business role.
That's right.
What is Pickle Music exactly?
Pickle Music is an award-winning music production company. So we specialize in original music, licensing, sonic branding, music supervision, and audio post. And we've been in business for about 6 years. And it is a more business and executive side of things. Still music, right? Because that's what I talk about and do all day. But definitely on the business side of things. Yeah.
So this is a whole nother world that, you know, a lot of people, I myself included, may not even know about when it comes to music. I mean, for a lot of us, it's usually live touring, maybe some studio stuff. But maybe you could talk about just how huge maybe this market is, and explain more kind of how Pickle Music came about and your role in it.
Maybe we'll start from the beginning, right? Because Pickle Music is now a lot of years of work that we've gotten to this position now. But back to singing. I got called to sing on a commercial, on a jingle. And I had done a few here and there for like a real estate company back when I was 18, 19, these little jobs. But then I got called for like a Little Caesars commercial where I was on camera talent, but then I had to go to the music house to sing the jingle. And then about 6 months later, they hit me up for like a Pepto-Bismol commercial. And meanwhile, I'm performing 6 nights a week. I'm doing the gig life. And like a light bulb popped up where I'm like, wait, this is normal? This is like a normal thing? And I didn't, kind of like what you just said, I didn't know that world existed to that level, right? I was like, oh, let me do this. And then they started telling me, this is back in 2011, right? Like 2010, 2011. And they're like, hey, and if you can record yourself from home, very rare that, but as a singer, if you want to start getting more jobs, maybe. So I started learning how to record myself, and I got into studio production in a world that I'm telling you, I learned by being booked on something that otherwise I would have not known it was there. I did learn that it is rare to get national union spots. So that is rare.
Sure.
Because the next one that I booked after that was like 3 years later. But there were a lot of jobs in between that are non-union, that are, so there's a lot to the business, but advertising is something that I was like, oh, I can make this transition, or not transition, but also work in this market. And then I never looked back. I got into a little bit of, I started being a consultant. They started hiring me as a consultant to talk about the Latin things, because what would happen is they would hire me for the Spanish stuff, right? It's all connected. Yeah. It's all connected. Come back to the singing world. Of course, I'm forever grateful for like my salsa upbringing. Even though I can sing in English and I can sing jazz and they would always call me for that. Which the truth is, I still don't knock it. Now I sing all, even on dancing. Going back to dancing, like I do some jazz stuff on that now.
Yeah.
But you have to get in somehow, right? Yep. And so when I was doing the jingles, I would get called for the Spanish things, and of course, before ChatGPT and AI that can really vet, at least accurately, some of these translations weren't good, especially if no one on that side was a minority or spoke the language. So I would see some translations that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's definitely not grammatically correct. So what I would do is I wouldn't say, hey, this is wrong. I would record it the way they wanted, which was wrong. And then I would record an alt version that when I would reply to them and send my files, I'd say, hey, I sent what you guys wanted, but just a heads up that I'm a fluent Spanish speaker. I've never heard that phrase before, but I also recorded this one that I believe is what, and it still keeps the same timing, the same phrasing, whatever. And sure enough, what would go live is my alt version. Wow. So that company was like, oh, let's start. Hey, are you open to, if we hired you, even if you're not singing the spot, if we can, if it's a female singer, do you mind checking the copy? And that's, so I start, dabbling a little bit with like, oh, I'm a consultant now. I'm being hit up for these projects, almost to curate, to make sure that it comes out correctly. And then I realized that there's not a lot of minorities, at least in the general market side. That's changed a lot, by the way, since now I'm happy to say there's a lot of change. But when I started, there wasn't a lot. And I saw an opportunity there to one, I felt like I was helping, right? Because I was able to make sure that what's being outputted is accurate, right? One of the case studies that I bring up all the time is there was this famous, there's a drink called Jarritos, which is, it's like, what do you want to say? Like Mexican soda?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there was a spot that they released that the voiceover was like, in Mexico, and in the background, they're showing places of Mexico.
Yeah. Keep going on that, by
right?
the way. Yeah.
Like, en Mexico, puedes tomar una bebida refrescante como Jarritos. Meanwhile, there's like a Peruvian charango being played in the background. And I'm sure, and I'm not dissing anybody. because you just if you're not educated, you don't know.
Yeah,
but I'm sure somebody was going through a music library and was like, that sounds Mexican.
Yeah.
But it was Peruvian.
Wow.
What was being played. And at that time, Twitter's probably not popping off like it is now. Like now you'll get called out immediately. Like between TikTok and IG and Twitter, like you'll get called out. We're in that era now where you can't really be inauthentic because people will be quick to be like, hey, that's not. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, that actually got approved. But I can see why it got approved because there's no one in the room that can say, hey, I don't know if that's, I don't think that's accurate. For example, cumbia, right? Which I don't want to get too technical. There's a lot of different cumbia.
Right.
There's cumbia from Colombia and there's cumbia from Mexico. Completely different sound. Like, it's still cumbia. So I think if you understand the idiosyncrasies of each genre, respecting it, or if you don't know, ask. So the work that we do is, or the work that I was doing when I got started was to make sure that what we were doing was correct, was accurate. Yeah. I don't even know that was the question because you asked me about Pickle, but I went off on like how I got started.
It was good.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit about how the introduction of AI has transformed the music space?
Yeah, I think if you're against it, you're gonna be the minority now because it's too late. Even if you don't agree with it, it's too late. It's here. Like that's so I'm me personally, I'm not against it. I don't think it has more value than a human creative, but I see it as a tool. I don't see it as like it's replacing, someone or a musician, or sure, there's a lot of these softwares that are doing that, but I think it ultimately comes down to the user. Now, Pickle, obviously, as a company in the industry, we're always doing research on the latest trends. We have to know what's out just because our clients also demand that we know what's the latest and greatest, right? And I think, again, if you use it as a tool to expedite your workflow, I don't see how that's a negative. Just get some basic knowledge of what is it, okay, what can it do? Learn the legalities. There's a lot of people with the voice changer, that's a whole thing. People think it's funny. Oh, let me submit. Someone that might not know about the industry can submit a celebrity voice, submit it or use it or put it online. Then you get a cease and desist letter and you're getting sued because do research, right, on what you can use and how you can use it. But we do utilize it and we use it as a tool to expedite our workflow.
I want to go back and kind of more in the business side of things.
Yeah.
As a musician, we solely focus on music.
Yeah.
But, you probably hear it a lot, especially for those up and coming, of how you have to be a brand, how you have to be kind of entrepreneur-like and all those kinds of things. And now that you've kind of really transitioned into the business side of things, what are some things that you could say in terms of opening up your mind more and educating yourself and even just researching on how to make a living these days, because it is getting tougher. Like you can't just keep gigging forever until you're 60, and maybe how about your transition into this kind of successful role? How has that helped open your mind into even more? And you talked about the journey again, like you've never stopped, like you haven't arrived and you kept adapting and changing.
Yeah, I think this is just like the season that I'm in. And I appreciate the words, man. Thank you. One, I do want to have a little disclaimer that I've always seen what I do as a business. So going back to you were asking me about like Harry Kim and how he saw me, even if the dollar amount was low, even if I was making an $80 gig, I treated it as a business, right? Because that's how I made a living. So very early on, did I make that decision, that conscious decision of like, hey, I'm gonna treat this like I'm clocking into a 9 to 5. That starts when I start driving out of my house. And so, or the preparation of that. So I want to disclaim that because I think people could think that comes later. Like the business side comes later, but I think a lot of successful people and people that make a living out of this have figured that out early on. And so it's not too late, right? But I think having passion for it and doing it because you love it, sure, that's something 100% you should have. But I don't think you should just rely on that. Because if it's just that you want to do, then it should be a hobby, right? Because you said something very powerful. How do you make a living out of it? Well, how do you make a living out of it is taking it as serious as a job. Having your finances, correct, meaning of you deciding, should I take this gig or not? Because everyone just says yes to all these gigs, but then you start accounting for travel time. You start accounting for how much gas am I going to spend? Am I going to have to, am I staying overnight somewhere? Are they paying for it? Like basic things that you should probably account. And I guarantee you that'll cancel out a lot of people's gigs. When they start to really realize like, hold on, is this really worth me doing this?
Yeah.
So back to your question, I think it's incredibly important to learn the business side.
You were talking about how you were very into salsa and that was your upbringing.
Yeah.
You had a chance to work with, the legend Oscar de Leon.
Yeah.
Which
That's
is incredible time. You did some stuff with Camila Cabello.
Yeah, I was on Bam Bam singing backgrounds with that features Ed Sheeran.
Wow.
Which is cool. Yeah, I also just saw somewhere it hit 1 billion streams. So
wow,
I
saw you post that. Yeah,
I could say, I was like, you like put your head down, you're working, all of a sudden they're like, hey, it's got 1 billion streams. I'm all right, cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Again, really lucky to work with some. Oscar de Leon is definitely like Mount Rushmore for me when it comes to salseros. I've backed up a lot of great salseros in my time. Tito Nieves. Tito Rojas, Eddie Santiago, like some of like the legacy guys. But Oscar de Leon is definitely like he's a living legend, right? Like people talk about, I'm sure in all cultures, I'm sure you're familiar with Celia Cruz. Like to me, that's where he is also. Like he's really important to the genre. He must have been in his mid 70s when we did that tour in 2016. And I actually wasn't in the salsa scene anymore. But I got called and I had never backed him up. And funny enough, he only travels with his band. So his band is half from Venezuela and half from Miami. And they denied, I think, at that, because of political situations, they denied the visas from the guys in Venezuela. So they had to get.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, this is a once in a lifetime thing. Like I got the call and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm going to go, do this. It was amazing, man, just to see somebody that's still hungry, right? At that age, that's done everything, has nothing to prove, and is still treats every performance like a game 7. I know you guys are sports fans. It was amazing. It was inspiring to see. Singing for 2 hours, improvising, putting on a show. There's no arrival.
Yeah.
Like you're just working, and so I think being around these type of artists, right, reminds you of the work that you got to put in. The Camila Cabello thing, like that was a record that was with Cheche, right? He was like the producer on it. Amazing group of people he put together, and again, you go into those rooms and there's a common denominator when you walk into these rooms, like. People are mindful of attention to detail. Like, in any one of those rooms, everyone's a master at their craft. No one shows up and it's like, yeah, we got it. Let's count it down. Here we go. And they just start playing. Everyone still has that hunger, and I think that's the recipe for why people succeed, why some tracks, have something special about it. Is because everyone cares about every note that's being sung or played, how it's played. Let's do it again. Let's try it. Let's perfect it. Again, I've been very lucky to play with some of these artists.
Yeah. You've been part of Grammy nominations. You played with some of the biggest artists. You've been on TV. You're a managing partner of a successful music publishing company. But in your own words, what is success? How would you define success?
Yeah, to any up and coming musician, singer, VO artist, there are some people out there that are saying to themselves, once I get that gig, once I land a movie, once I land a tour, once I land, I think if you have that mindset, once you get it, and then you realize that there's more work to be done once it's done, because because it could be tough. And I'm sure, you know, you've toured yourself. You know, you've been around a lot of successful artists. Like, you come back and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's not like you made it.
Yeah.
Sure, you landed a cool opportunity, but then it's on to the next. Like, a question I'm gonna ask you is, what does that mean though? Are you talking, does success mean I'm a millionaire? Because I also think it's tough for a lot of musicians out there because everyone sees what's online. And I think if you're comparing yourself to that, it's gonna be tough, Rob.
Yeah.
You know, to me, success as a musician is, can you make a solid living, go to sleep at night and be proud of what you do? That to me is success. You know, is it I have to be in the limelight and you know, my face on the poster and I'm touring or I'm this or I'm on, you know, if that's what it is, that's cool, but that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have a list of people that are hungry, that are trying to get those gigs. Like, so I would just say to any musician that's wanting to do this, why do you do it? Right? Like, are you passionate about it? Lean into that, right? Like, lean into the passion. I'll tell you right now, there are some projects. It doesn't matter what I'm getting paid. I'll do it because I love it. Because it's fun. I would do this no matter what. Like, you know, that to me is where I know that at least for me, right? Like, my truth, I'm doing the right thing because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like I do work in a corporate setting, but to me, it's not a 9 to 5, right? Like, when I'm on these calls with brands and we're talking about their creative and music, to me, it's just like we're just having fun. It's cool. That would be how I would, I guess, I don't know what to call it, define success.
Yeah. Loving what you do daily, being able to provide for your family.
Yeah.
Live comfortably. It doesn't even matter if you're playing for the brightest top stars or on TV or not.
Right.
You know, when you get to wake up and have pride in what you do.
Right.
Oh man, that's such great words. What's next for James? You know, it seems like there's always new you know, projects and goals on the horizon. What's something you could share? Maybe something with Pickle or, you know, just James in general.
Pickle's where it's at right now. Pickle is I've taken a backseat from singing live. I don't, you know, it's been a while because I'm running this company, right? We have offices in Madrid, Buenos Aires. We have an office in Brooklyn, and we just started this team in LA. Like, so we're expanding. My focus is now that.
Where can people find you online?
Yeah, you can go to jamesavaleta.com. And if you guys want to learn about Pickle, you guys can go to picklemusicstudios.com and check out some of the work we do. I'll also extend, we're always on the lookout to extend the network of freelance composers and vocalists and VO artists. So yeah, for anyone that's there, just go ahead and write to all the, you know, there's a New York email, there's an info email. I would recommend you use the info at picklemusicstudios.com.
Gotcha. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again to James Zavaleta for joining the Chad and Chong podcast.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to subscribe, like, comment, share with your friends, let them know what's going on, and we will see you guys on the next episode.